Whoa, it's Wulzy. Welcome back to another Geometry Dash building video. Today I've got some creator insight. That's right, today I'm going to be showcasing a construct that you can apply to your Geometry Dash levels for some streamlined and efficient effect making. For a while, the most effective tactic available for looping a set of triggers was to use the spawn loop. However, the spawn loop is pretty fragile compared to what I'm going to be showcasing today, as with short delay times in this box right here, it does break, unfortunately. Before I jump in, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and I'll come back with more. I also gotta acknowledge Lake and Overdefo. I first saw this concept from Lake in the creation rotation video I did with Embed Subwoofer, Juni, and Lake.
You can just make a spawn.
Why? What does it do? Then, many months down the line, Overdefo showed me something that he made actually using that concept, and I figured out that many creators have actually got their hands on it. So I'm going to show you a really simplified version first, and then I'm going to apply it to my own little effect. It's going to involve the collision blocks right here. It's also rotation based, which is really interesting, and I really like that concept because you can apply easings and stuff to it. First off, we have a center point, which I'm going to set as group 1. Then I'm going to set down a collision block over here, which is going to be dynamic. That's going to go on editor layer 1, separate from what I'm about to place. I'm going to place 4 blank collision triggers right here. Then I'm going to individually edit the properties so that they all have different block IDs. These IDs differ from regular group IDs. It should be noted. These are completely separate. And they're all static, so they don't have the dynamic block option enabled. This dynamic object needs group number 2. I'm going to set up a rotation for group number 2 around number 1. 2 seconds, I'm going to put ease in out. 1 time around 360, so when I press play, that is going to rotate around every single object. I need to use the collision trigger, which is basically looking for a condition to do with these collision blocks. For example, this dynamic object right here might be block ID number 5, right? So block A, the dynamic block I'm going to say in this case, is 5. Then I need to set up 4 of these triggers, 1 for each of the IDs that we placed that range from 1 to 4. And we're going to have a brand new target ID to have affected as a result. So I'm going to have this block right here, which is going to be set to group number 3. I'm going to set up this trigger to target number 3. It's going to activate the group, and for that reason, I'm going to place a toggle trigger on the left, which is going to initially toggle it. Then I repeat this process multiple times until I have 4 different triggers, 1 for each object that I set up earlier. The next one is 2. I put that in the block B ID, and I'm going to make the target ID number 4, which is going to be a new block to the right of number 3, and that is also going to be toggled at the very beginning. So I just repeat this process of increasing the block B ID and the target ID, making that proposed target, and also toggling it at the beginning. Just one more time. Right there, we have number 6, and then boom, we toggle it. So now, here's the result of my playtest. That's kind of weird, right? The one on the left appeared much after the other 3. And I'm pretty sure that is because this dynamic object actually starts off on the collision block. So what I need to do is move it up. It's on group number 2, so I can set down this movement really quickly, 2 blocks down, so that as soon as we start the loop, they will immediately make contact and make this block appear first. I'm pretty sure that's how you fix that issue. 1, 2, 3, 4. What? Oh, it's happening before the collision triggers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm going to show you how you can apply it to make a scaling effect that actually loops over and over again. Alrighty. Center ID. 10 blocks apart from this spot on either end, we're going to have our first collision object. And I'm going to rotate 45 degrees as well. So with 45 degrees spacing, we have each collision block. Now, common factors of 45 include 9 and 5. So I'm going to make a new set of these with a group number 1, which is going to be rotated around the center ID, which I'm going to make it 2 this time. Mainly because I just forgot to make it have a group in the first place. So here we have a rotation trigger at the very beginning of the level on 0 move time, which is going to rotate those objects by 9 degrees. And this is just a more precise way to space out these collision blocks evenly, rather than trying to judge it by eye with a free rotate. So now I can select these newly added collision blocks, copy paste them again, and give them another new group 3, which is going to rotate another 9 degrees. Boom, there we have another set. We need 2 more sets, so there's going to be one with 3 groups and one with 4, and all we have to do is copy the rotation triggers. So boom, there we have our circle. We have perfectly spaced out collision blocks. There are 40 of these in total, which isn't too bad. Then I'm going to start the tedious process of giving a new block ID to every single collision object that we have set out over here. Starting with 1, and it should end on 40. Just by clicking the plus button on this menu here. First things first, we set up our condition with the collision trigger. We have our dynamic object 100, which is first going to touch our first ID, targeting group 100, I'm going to say, just because it's a nice easy number, activating the group, which means that we need a toggle. Pause. If you're activating a trigger, you do not need a toggle trigger at the beginning. I'm actually going to be using move triggers to swap one object with another, which is going to be slightly bigger by 0.05 on the scale. So instead of toggling a block, we're actually going to be toggling a move trigger. As you can see, the editor has given it an effect line. That means that in its current form, whenever this blue line is crossed, this move trigger will occur. And we don't want that. We want this collision trigger to dictate when the move trigger is being toggled on. So what we do is we edit the object and we spawn trigger this object. And if we're looping it, we're going to be using multi-trigger. We are going to be looping it. And just to make this easy for me, I'm going to target group number 200. The first object, the scale 1, is going to be moved up 10 blocks, which is 100 on the Y. So this object right here, ba-boom, it's up there now, as long as it has group number 200. There we go. Then this new object up here needs to take its place. So its group number is going to be 201. I'm going to create a new move trigger right beside it, which moves 201 down by 10 blocks. It's multi-triggered, it's spawn triggered, and this 100 that is targeted by the collision trigger is given to both of these move triggers. So here we have group number 100. To fulfill every other condition, I now need 40 collision triggers, which is one for every block B ID. And the target ID is also going to increase by 1, which means that the next frame of our little animation needs to be on group number 101. The next frame would be to move this object back up to the hidden location. So we need that block to move 10 blocks upwards again. And then group number 202 is moved down. Group 202 would be the scale 1.1 object up here, like so. And we need to remember the no, we don't. I just realized that I never gave a group to the dynamic object to rotate around our center here. That was very silly of me. I need a rotation, which can go right here after the collisions. A 6 around 2, which is our dynamic around the center. I'm going to say this is a 5-second move time. Ease in out, which is going to be a huge deal when it comes to making this look really smooth. We're going to be looping this, so we need more than one time around 360, but just for the showcasing purposes, I'm going to start off with 1, just to make sure everything works. Wow, I never made this object dynamic. Are you kidding me? I was just staring at it thinking, why is it not working? Let me move these objects a little bit just so you can see what's happening when I press play. When these objects are collided with, they are swapping places, and this object is made to look slightly bigger with every frame that occurs. The fastest way for me to repeat this process is to start off here, actually, and just make a theoretical group 203 with the same steps that we did earlier. Positive 100, negative 100. I'm going to remove the edit group from these and just copy paste and increase the group number by 1, like so, moving it up by 1 every time. A trigger's Y position doesn't actually matter, but it's just nice for me to be able to select each individual trigger and be able to have a better visualization of what I've got. There's 40 frames and we started on 0, so that means our final target group ID should be 239. Boom, there we go. Then I've got to fill in the 202 that we missed, which is plus 100, and I'm going to look at our first frame, 200. This is moved 10 blocks up, but at the very end of this loop, it needs to be moved back down. So I'm going to fill that in right now. Group 200 moves back down 10. So we have all of our move triggers in preemptively before we've even made any of these objects. I need to do the same for the collision triggers, to be honest. Increasing the block ID by 1 so we get the coverage of the whole thing. Increasing the target ID by 1. And you know what that means? That means that we need to go row by row after we've already copy paste and add the group IDs. Wow, I typed the wrong number. That should be 102. So the next row is going to be 103. Yeah, this is the sucky part about collision triggers. You have to just take your time. Something else worth noting is that you can't edit more than one collision trigger at once. The nice thing about the way that I've managed my groups is that I can just look at the target ID that I'm setting right here and match it with the row that I'm on. And that's going to make sure that I don't really go off track. Now all we need to do is copy paste, increase the scale of the object by 1, open up this menu, and increase the group number by 1. And something that's nice about this is that the number after the decimal is 5 times the number on the end of my group ID. We got 85, 17 times 5 is 85. It's so beautiful. Okay, so I've made it to scale 2 times. We're on group 220 there. Now, when I press play, this should scale up in size like so. and it disappears because it gets toggled at the end. But I caught myself off guard. I said toggled, but I got illusioned by the move trigger that just moves it out of place. I'm gonna show you a small change I want to make. So this is the current rotation I've got. The easing isn't too noticeable, right? I mean, it's there, but if I really want to push this, what I can do is increase the easing rate to 5 to make that way more intense. And you'll notice now when I hit play, it is much more noticeable. Like, it speeds round there. And here's how it affects the block. Smooth, right? Just gotta keep going so I get the other end of it too. Ah, I had scale 2.25, my group was 225. That's crazy. Boom. Now let's take a look, shall we? Not bad. And then it goes back to the beginning. Now, what does this mean? This means that if I increase the move time, for example, and I want to make this rotate 4 times around 360, this is what's going to happen to our beloved little block right here. It's going to start off slow, then it's going to speed up, increase in size, and here it goes. It's scaling, and then it slows back down, and it should go back to the regular size at the end, question mark? Yes, it does. Okay, so let's talk about my verdict here. What does this mean? This means you can create extremely versatile loops like this, with different easings and whatnot, depending on what triggers you're actually using. I hope this was a fun video to watch. I did kind of trip over my words a few times and get mixed up with myself a couple of times. Hopefully it wasn't too jarring, but I definitely recommend you try this out. It doesn't have to be on the same scale as mine. You can make it as big or as small as you want. Thank you so much for watching this Geometry Dash effect tutorial video, I guess. Check the links in the description, leave a like and subscribe, and have a good day.